What's up, everybody? In today's video, we are going to be talking all about ill will. We're going to be talking about what ill will is, the characteristics of it, and how to identify it, as well as how to transform it, because I'll tell you right now, ill will is not something that you want to cultivate and to continue to have as a trait within your life. So you may have heard of ill will before, and the reason I'm making today's video is because while I was at work earlier today, suddenly, in a kind of spontaneous way, I started thinking about ill will and how I've heard of this term before, how ill will happens to be one of the 5 hindrances to liberation in Buddhism. So in that sense, it's kind of a big deal if it's holding you back from becoming liberated, becoming enlightened. And I was thinking today of that, and also how in my recent past I've noticed qualities in myself of ill will. And just throughout the day at work today, I began thinking and reflecting on what this thing ill will is. A lot of thoughts were running through my mind, and I thought it would be fun to sit down and talk with you guys about ill will and how I feel about what ill will is and what that is, and I guess in essence why it's not really a good thing to have, and how it's in a way explanatory of the state of people and society and things like that. So I'm going to get right to it. I want to keep this video very straightforward and formal, I guess you could say. So like I said, you've probably heard of ill will before, but if you're anything like me, maybe you haven't looked into what ill will is, where that term comes from, and what it applies to. But it's kind of self-explanatory when you just hear ill will. Essentially what ill will is malice. It's wishing for the suffering of others, whether, and yes, I'm reading notes here, I got it all written down, that's just going to keep me on track. It's malice, it's malintent, it's wishing for the suffering of others, whether for your perceived benefit or for the sake of their pain. Ill will is wishing for others to be in a negative state or to experience suffering, whether it be to benefit you, and we're going to get into all the sort of dynamics of this ill will thing and why you would want someone to feel bad, like literally why you would want someone to feel bad. We're going to get into all that, but that's part of what ill will is you're wishing for the suffering of others, whether it's to benefit you or whether it's for the sake of their pain, whether like where you literally just want them to not feel good, you want them to suffer. So in this fashion of trying to keep it formal and straightforward, I've categorized the ill will into 2 types of categories. I've called it positive ill will and negative ill will. And when I say this, don't think that positive means good ill will and negative means bad ill will, because all these types of ill will that I'm talking about are negative. It's literally just a means of differentiating the kind of 2 different natures of what causes ill will. So I will describe the first being, I will describe the 2 different types of ill will that I have listed here. It's wanting someone or others to suffer because you think they deserve it, and wanting someone to suffer because you desire for them to want something from you or others. This is the major difference here, is negative ill will is wanting someone to suffer because you think they deserve it. And some examples of this negative ill will could be disagreeing with someone, being hurt, offended, or betrayed by someone, hating someone or a type or group of people. And then I have listed here sadism, being literally just sadistic or sociopathic. And this brings into the equation mental health and how mental health plays a role in ill will. Being sadistic, being a sociopath, not being able to perceive the feelings of others and how you're affecting them. And to carry on with the negative ill will, getting pleasure or feelings of grandiosity out of making others suffer. This is what I would describe as negative ill will. And I guess in a way the reason I did call negative ill will and positive ill will is because in a way positive ill will, as you'll hear in a moment, is kind of tied into a greater outcome. And I'm not going to say that greater outcome is good, because it's ill will. The nature of it is negative. But negative ill will, the reason I differentiated these things is because negative ill will is the only intent behind it is you want that other being to hurt. You want that other being to be in pain, or that other group of people to be in pain. So in essence, what negative ill will is thinking someone deserves to suffer. And there are a lot of examples that we can see of this. There's a lot of examples we can see where maybe we ourselves think someone deserves to suffer, or we can see other people who feel that certain people or certain groups of people deserve to suffer. And some examples of this negative ill will, aside from what I've already said, are, say, someone murders someone you love. Generally, it's really hard to wish for compassion and love of this being that murdered someone you love. Generally, at least in, like mainstream how shit is, if someone murders someone you love, you want them to be murdered. You want them to hurt. You think they deserve to be hurt. You think they deserve to suffer because of how they've made you feel and because of what they did that was so detrimentally wrong. Someone robs you, or fires you, or harshly judges and disagrees with you. Someone that gets in your way. Someone that makes what you desire harder to achieve. And for example of what I just said, someone being inherently better than you at something, whether it's a sport or a job or any sort of hobby or activity that you have a sort of competitive mindset towards. If someone's better than you at those things, you may have ill will towards them. You may wish for them. You think they deserve to mess up or be not as good, not be as good, because that's the ill will that you have towards them, is because you want to be the better one. You want to be the better one. You want to be the one that's the star. You know what I mean? So those are some examples of negative ill will. You think of just someone doing something that you think is wrong, and maybe it doesn't even have to be what we would call morally wrong, meaning someone murders someone you love or someone robs you. Those things, it's very hard to not think that that person deserves some sort of repercussive suffering for the suffering that they've caused you and your loved ones. But also in this negative ill will is examples of, I guess in a way what you could say, more of a light-hearted stupidity of, like I said, your boss fires you and you wish bad for him because I shouldn't have been fired. Or someone's better than you at a sport or something you're interested in doing, and you just feel like you want to be the better one. So you wish bad, you give ill will towards this person that's just better than you at what you're doing. So that's negative ill will. Negative ill will, I guess in a way you can think of it as, it's negatively oriented. It's not for any sort of deeper intention than wanting someone else or others to suffer. And now, positive ill will. And remember, this does not mean good ill will. No ill will is good. That's why I said dun dun in the beginning when I began opening the video. It's because no ill will is good. So, an example of positive ill will is a little bit more playing on psychology and the ego, in a way trying to be manipulative. And some examples of this you can think of: psychologists or doctors not wanting their patients to get better. The psychologist or the doctor, because after all, it's the patient that keeps the psychologist and the doctor employed. So the psychologist or the doctor might be thinking to themselves, I hope they don't get better. I hope they need to keep coming back to me. I hope they need to keep giving this organization money. I don't want them to get better, because if they get better, that means I don't make money anymore. And we can get into big pharma and how that's majorly a thing that's going on in this culture, but maybe that's another video. Wanting someone to get injured or lose their ability so that you can step up to the plate. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier in the negative ill will. Is someone, say there's a job position that you'd like, but it's taken up by someone that you, through this ill will that I'm talking about, maybe you want them to like slip on a banana peel when they walk out so they can't come into work for a few weeks, or they get laid off or something, so that hopefully, in the hopes that you get moved into that position that you want instead of him or her. So wanting someone to get injured or lose their ability to do the thing that you feel entitled to be doing instead. You know, and that's kind of like I was talking about, the sport thing, or whatever it is, whatever sort of activity, whether it's a job or a sport or a hobby or whatever it is, wanting something bad to happen to the being that you are, in a way, jealous of. Wanting someone who's in a relationship to not feel satisfied and or leave their partner so that they become available to you instead and want you instead. That's a good one. You can think of examples of, you know, there's a girl or a guy that's having a hard time with their significant other, and they're talking to you, and you maybe are attracted to that girl or guy, and they're telling you about how hard it is, and you're going, wow, that really sucks. But in your head, you're thinking, oh, I hope they break up so that he or she is available to me and wants me instead, and I hope they think that me being here is like a means of a connection between us. It's messed up. It's fucked up. And that's why it's called ill will. And that's why I want to talk about it and just be as blatantly and bluntly obvious, realistic as I can, is because this is something we do. This is something we all do. This is a scheming of the ego, and we're going to get into, you know, where this ill will is coming from in a little bit. But I'm just trying to start off by giving you guys some examples of what this ill will thing is that I'm talking about. And that's a good example of it, is you want this being to not be happy in their relationship so that you can come into the equation, and hopefully, because you want them, now you want them to become available. And what does that mean? That means they have to leave their partner that they have right now, unless you're having like a polyamorous situation going on. But other than that, you want that, you feel almost that being needs to leave that other being so that that being that you are attracted to and want to be with becomes what you'd call available to you. Very messed up. Very messed up. Wanting something catastrophic or detrimental to happen to someone so that they seek want or need you or what you feel they should want. An example of this that I can give is something personal that I've actually noticed in myself, which is I've had as you all know, if you watch my videos, I've worked with psychedelics quite a bit, and I've had some pretty rough experiences on psychedelics. I don't go as far as calling them bad trips, but I've had some rough, frightening, saddening experiences with psychedelics. And there's been times where I'm with someone who's taking a psychedelic. I'm just going to check real quick that this is still recording. Yes, we're still going. I got a new phone, that's the fun part. There's been times where I'm with someone who's taking a psychedelic, and maybe I see them starting to have a sort of introspectively rough time, or they're coming up and they're like, oh God, something in me gets excited, and I guess we can call this ill will, because I'm in a way hoping that they have a catastrophic or detrimental, to keep it similar to what I'm talking about here, moment with the psychedelic, so that they can feel what I felt, you know what I mean? They can be as scared as I was. They can be as sad as I was. They can recognize that fearful moment that I was, that shook me to my core. When there's been times where I see someone that's coming up on a psychedelic and it looks like they are like teetering on the edges of like ego death, or like just feeling overwhelmed. Something in me is excited that they might have a deep and profound experience. And that honestly is the reason that I call that I put this in the category of positive ill will, is because I don't just want them to suffer. I don't just want them to hurt and be scared and have a frightening experience. I want that in them because what it's done for me is wake me up to some deep, far out stuff that's really made me wonder, and if I'm to look back on it, has honestly been beneficial in my spiritual development. So in that sense, it's not out of sheer negativity. It's out of a distorted and weird, twisted human perspective way of hoping that being has a rough experience because it might bring them to something deeper. If somebody's depressed, or if somebody's having a rough psychedelic experience, and you in a way want them to go through that, so because you know how beneficial it can turn out to be, I wouldn't call that entirely negative. I wouldn't call that directly related to wanting them to just suffer for the sake of suffering and because that makes you pleasurable. That's the negative ill will that I'm talking about. And this positive thing I'm talking about is because you feel like you have an ill-will desire towards them going through a hard time, because you know there's a possibility or a chance that they might awaken to something deeper, I guess is a good way to put it. Let's see here. Yeah, and in parentheses for that, of examples of that, I have religion, awakening, getting sober, changing their lifestyle to what you think they should be doing, having a bad trip. And that's kind of what I mean, like the example here of getting sober. If someone is just getting shit-faced every single day and is a raging alcoholic, maybe you have the desire, the ill-willed desire, for them to really dive deep into that alcoholism, because you know that maybe they'll hit that rock bottom that you hear people talk about, and in turn awaken out of drinking so habitually and become sober. So this positive ill will has a touch within it of love or intention. Maybe let's not go as far as to say love, but there is an intention, and maybe a good intention. If it was a bad intention of something that's more so of just wanting them to suffer, that would be negative ill will. But positive ill will, although still distorted, although still a perverted egoic perception, can have within it ties of beneficial intention. And like I said here, changing their lifestyle to what you think they should be doing. If someone's having a good time, it doesn't have to be a hard time. If someone's having a good time, but they're not living in a way that you live your life and feel like is the right way to be living, you may wish for something bad to happen to them. You may have ill will towards them because of that seed of intention that I was talking about with positive ill will that might change their lifestyle to what you think would be good for them. You are having ill will towards someone and wanting something maybe bad to happen to them so that because there's the potential that they could awaken to how you think about things and how you feel about the world. So as you can see, even in this positive ill will that I've been talking about, it's not really good. It's not really a cool trait to have. In essence, it's manipulation and wanting to control and be superior and grandiose to the situation where you have control over someone. And if things aren't going the way that you'd like them to be, you are wishing bad for your fellow brothers and sisters. So it's not good. Don't take how I've been talking about the seed of good intention within ill will. Don't take that as a means of thinking that ill will itself is good, because it's not. It's not. It's a negative frame of thinking that comes out of ego. And we're going to get into where ill will comes from and what the roots of ill will are. But right now I'm trying to just kind of flesh out for you guys what ill will is and how I feel about ill will. And I wrote all this literally like fucking 10 minutes ago. It's funny that I'm just sitting here talking to you all about it. This is another example of positive ill will. Wanting to ignore, hurt, or offend someone as a form of payback for how they made you feel. This is a good one. When somebody's hurt you, or betrayed you, or been mean to you, or offended you in any way. Wanting to ignore, hurt, or offend them as a form of revenge and payback for how they made you feel. That's ill will. That's not harmoniously balancing out like what you deserve and what they deserve. It's ill will. If somebody does you wrong, you shouldn't be in a position of wanting to do them wrong because they did you wrong, because now they're going to do you wrong because you did them wrong, and it's not solving the problem whatsoever. It's perpetuating it. When someone has ill will towards you or does something mean to you, even if they didn't mean or intend to do something mean to you, and you have a feeling of wanting to get revenge, that's ill will. That's ill will. I'm not going to talk about if it's right or wrong to want to get revenge, because that goes into the hands of the Creator. That goes into the hands of the flowing of the moment and how it's all meant to be carried out. And I'm just going to sit here and tell you that it's probably not a good idea to want to seek revenge and hold grudges and want bad for people because they did you wrong. It's not a good start, especially if you're on the spiritual path and have awakened to the spiritual path. It's not really a good vibe to want bad for others. If you study any amount, you're going to see that that's not really a good way to carry yourself. It's not good karma, it's not good energy, it's not good vibes, and it's not going to help you or them get over ill will and get over hurting and offending each other any quicker. So, if you can, just work on dropping that shit, you know? So in essence, in the same way that I gave in the same way that I told what the essence of negative ill will is, the essence of positive ill will is wishing suffering for someone or others in the hopes of a direct outcome relating to your well-being, or the well-being of humanity, or the environment, or a religion, things like that, or a business, a business deal, wanting someone to be in a bad position, having ill will towards someone, like I've been talking about, so that it benefits you and what you want, or what you think the environment wants, or what you think would be good for your business or the business that you work for. Wanting something bad to happen to them so that it benefits you or that thing that you are tied in with, whether it's like the environment, nature, the well-being of nature, or a business, or whatever, or you in particular, wanting something bad to happen to someone so that it benefits you in a way that you think benefits you. Not good stuff. But that's really it of how I would describe ill will, of what ill will is. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with those things that I've listed, those examples of ill will in action, in karma, of seeing it, whether it's in yourself or people around you or people in the world, that you can see this ill will. It's not a good thing. So now we're going to move on to the characteristic roots of ill will, of what it, I guess, in a way, the feelings that characterize and encompass ill will. The feelings that can be the roots of ill will coming out of you into the physical world, or just coming into your mind. What it is that you feel that causes you to have this ill will. And both positive and negative. I also have that as well. It's not the roots of ill will, even though I made positive and negative ill will, the roots are the same. And the way I have it laid out here is it's different branches of what manifests what. And the first branch, the first very root of ill will itself is desire. And I feel that desire is something that, in a way, is manifesting this whole thing we're a part of, which is why I put it at the very beginning of the root of ill will. Because desire is there. Desire is why things are happening. Out of desire, at least in humans, comes ego, comes an I that is fulfilling these desires or not getting these desires. Out of desire of life, of the happening of life, comes the self that life is happening to. Out of the desire of life happening comes the self, the subjective I that life is happening to. Out of ego, as you all probably know very well, comes opinions and beliefs. This ego accumulates different perspectives and opinions and beliefs, and believes in this and doesn't believe in that, and thinks this is right and that's wrong. Out of the ego comes opinions and beliefs. Out of opinions and beliefs, so we've gone desire, the very driving force of existence itself, life itself. Out of desire comes ego, a self that is happening, the I that the desire of the driving life is happening to, the ego. Out of the ego comes opinions and beliefs that the ego accumulates through conditioning, be it from external situations and what that ego itself is indulging in. Out of that comes the opinions and beliefs, and out of opinions and beliefs comes judgments, where the ego, the self that life is happening to, that has all these opinions and beliefs, judges all these different situations and all these different circumstances and scenarios. It has judgments towards this or that. And out of judgments, and remember, this is all tied into desire. This is all tied into what you and I think we want, and really, really, really want, out of the things that we just really want so badly. Out of all that comes manipulation. This is where the ego, the perverted, distorted ego, the little self, begins to try to manipulate the world to conform to how it thinks things should be and what it wants things to be. Out of all of this, starting with desire, ends with manipulation, the ego trying to control the world. Because the ego begins to realize that its needs aren't being fulfilled. At least in this culture and the way we live our life, its desires overstep or overshoot what this world is providing to it. It's not getting what it wants. It keeps being let down. It's judging all these things, and all these things are not how it should be according to the conditioned ego, and so it manipulates, it attempts to manipulate the world and people to conform to how it feels things should be and what it wants, what it really, really wants. This is the roots of ill will. Out of not having our inherent desires fulfilled, we begin to have malintent and negative perspective towards the world and others, and in that try to manipulate the world to get us what we want. Because we can't see, we as an ego, as a little tiny little self, can't seem to get what we want. So we need the external world to fulfill our desires. But they don't seem to be doing what I want them to do. So I need to come in and try to manipulate them. I need to come in and try to control them, to make them do what I want them to do, to make them see what I want them to see, to give them the pain that they deserve because they're bad. That is where ill will comes from. Desire. It's rooted in desire. Desire is happening to an ego, a separate self. This ego thinks and feels and experiences life, and through that accumulates beliefs, and then judges the world, and because it's not getting what it wants, it begins to try to manipulate the world. That's where ill will is coming from. Now to talk about the actual feelings that can come about, that can cause an ego to have ill will towards someone or a group of people. Feelings like, and once again I'm sure you're all very familiar with these feelings, greed, wanting more and avoiding of the wanting of more and the aversion of less. Wanting more and more and more. Not feeling like you have enough, you just need more. Greed. Ill will can come out of that. Lust. I guess in a way you could call lust greed as well, but maybe in a more so sensually gratifying way. Directly gratifying to the senses. Envy and jealousy. Maybe you're jealous of someone, whether it be because they're prettier than you, or skinnier than you, or you think they're cooler than you, or they have more money than you, or they have more sex than you, or you think they're cooler and you're jealous of them. Ill will comes out of that. You feel jealous towards someone and you have ill will towards them. Hatred and anger, hating someone or a group of people, which is very much so prevalent in this time that we live in. Hating a group of people, a certain political system or a certain belief system, hating them and being angry at them. That is a root feeling of where ill will can be born. Entitlement and righteousness, and I have in parentheses here, just being a douchebag, feeling like you're entitled to what you're doing or what you own or where you live or where you're walking, and feeling righteous, and this other person that's getting in your way deserves to experience pain because they're getting in your way, and you're better than them, and you're entitled to this, and you know more than them, and just out of entitlement and righteousness, just being a douchebag. Ill will is born out of just being a douchebag. Sadness, pain, and suffering. When you're sad and despairing and suffering and hurting, you can have ill will towards people. Maybe people that are happier than you. When you see someone that's happier and enjoying life, you say, oh, ignorance is bliss. They're so stupid. I'm deep. I'm aware, and that's why I'm experiencing the depths of these pain. And if they were as deep as I am, they would be in pain too. It's almost like I'm talking about things that this ego here has thought to itself. Being sad and in pain and suffering is a cause, a root feeling of ill will. And I guess in a way you could tie that into jealousy. That's why I've got all these things listed here, is because it all kind of ties together. It all kind of ties together of wanting bad shit to happen to someone, you know? And then I get into mental health issues, things like sadism or narcissism or sociopathy, of being sadistic, literally just wanting someone to be in pain for no greater reason than you get pleasure out of seeing them in pain. Or being a narcissist, where you have feelings of being better than everyone, and if someone's acting like a little too much than what you think they should be, having ill will, and maybe even coming out into the physical realm, the 3D realm, to put them down, put them back in their place where you think they should be, you know what I mean? Sociopathy, not being able to feel the feelings of others, not being able to perceive how you're making people feel. If you're not aware of how you're making people feel, you're gonna have a lot of ill will, because you don't care and or know how you're making people feel, you know? I'm surprised at how short this video is. It makes me happy. We're keeping it rolling, guys. We're keeping it rolling. So yeah, I put that in there because I'm not a neurologist. I'm not a psychologist. I don't know about how the brain actually works, but I can very much so imagine that having a mental illness, a specific mental illness, can indeed also be a root cause of ill will, whether it be sadism, narcissism, sociopathy, those kinds of things, where the brain isn't functioning in a high and clear state. So ill will is kind of being chemically born out of that mental illness. So at that level, it's not just the unspiritual, unawakened ego. It's literally a mental illness that being has, and because of which there is being ill will born out of that they might not even be aware of. So that must be considered too, is the actual mental state, the mental health of these beings, of yourself, of these others that have ill will, of all of it, you know? And then I say, etc., etc., etc. There's plenty of feelings that we'll get that will be what cause ill will to be born. There are many feelings we'll have that will make us want something bad or not so good to happen to someone else. You know what I mean? As I've been describing, whether it's you think it'll benefit you if they feel bad, or you think they deserve it, or you think they'll awaken to the depths of reality, or they'll get sober because, you know what I mean? Those are all viable reasons as to why you'd want something bad to happen to someone, you know? Hope this is all making sense. The next thing I have listed here is fantasies and direct manipulation. This is when ill will begins to move a step beyond perception and moves into fantasizing and directly manipulating. And what I mean by that is, for example, physically sabotaging situations. In this world, physically sabotaging a situation, cutting someone, that's what I have listed here, cutting someone's brake lines, leaving a mess or a mistake for someone else that you don't like, that you have ill will towards, you know, you cut their brakes, or you leave, you know, you're doing your thing and you leave a mess for them that you know they're gonna run into later down the road, and you go, haha, fuck them, you know, ill will. That's ill will for you. Lying, literally starting rumors, lying to people about people, or lying to the person you have ill will towards, literally making shit up. This is when ill will begins to move from just a feeling into actually being a thing that you're doing. You're being a negative person now when you act on this ill will. When you want something bad to happen to someone so badly that you begin to manipulate the situation so that it fulfills your negative outcome that you have for that person. It's fucked up. Revealing personal information about someone, telling on someone to get them in trouble. Going around and gossiping about someone that you have ill will towards. Telling all this personal information that maybe you acquired from them when you were in a close, intimate, trusting relationship with them. And now that they've fucked you over, you want to go and tell all the secrets and all the dark, deep, dark, shadow self, negative, nasty stuff about them, so that everybody else is going, oh my gosh, they're such a bad person, they're so negative, they're so undeveloped, they're so unaware. You know what I mean? Going around and gossiping about the person that you have ill will towards. Telling on someone. Revealing someone's secrets, Setting someone up. Setting up a situation that you know is going to fuck this person over that you have ill will towards. You can see how the ill will has moved much further beyond just being the feeling of ill will, and is now you literally animating the feeling into the world. Now you are literally being a serving force in trying to make that person's life worse. This is what I'm saying, that ill will isn't good in any way. You're trying to manipulate the environment to conform to how you want it to be. If you think someone deserves to suffer and feel pain or embarrassment or sadness or whatever, anger, and you're coming out into the physical world, sabotaging the physical world, doing all these things I've listed here, trying to make them suffer, that's not good, man. It's not good that you're doing that shit. It's not good to do that shit. And I have an essence written here of the direct manipulation that I'm talking about, which is saying/doing something in hopes of a negative outcome for the person to whom you have ill will towards. Saying something to that person or other people, or doing something to that person or other people, so that you can expedite the fulfillment of the negative thing that you want to happen to them, Not good shit. You're literally coming into the physical world now and being a negative person to try and fulfill your ill will. And the other thing I listed here a moment ago was fantasies. This is a step before going into direct manipulation of the person and the world. And it's imagining and hoping for the fulfillment of the negative outcome for that being to whom you have ill will towards. You're creating scenarios of how that ill will energy could be fulfilled. You want something bad to happen to someone, so you're sitting there and imagining and fantasizing about all the ways that bad thing could happen to them. And could it happen in this way? And maybe this is how it could happen. And, you know what I mean? Literally fantasizing about the bad outcome that you have for that person. Not necessarily taking physical action. That's what I have listed here for the fantasizing part. Is you're not taking any sort of physical action. You're not saying anything with the tongue or doing anything with the body to fulfill that ill will outcome that you have for that person. But you're fantasizing about them suffering. You know what I mean? It sounds fucked up, but isn't that how we kind of are? Isn't that how egos are? You know what I mean? And I'm going to put my hair up real quick. Next thing I have here is, not necessarily taking action. I have acting positive and loving in conversation or association, but then imagining and fantasizing and hoping for the negative outcome without telling them, of course. Where when they're in your presence, you act all loving and sweet and kind and compassionate and all that. But in the background, in the behind the scenes where you think they can't contact and you're safe, you're imagining and fantasizing about bad shit, about bad outcomes for them, for whatever reason, whatever the root cause of the ill will is, and whatever the circumstance of the ill will is that you have for this being. Not good shit. Never good shit. Even fantasizing about the fulfillment of something bad happening to someone, even if you think it's for the greater good, you're wasting your time and you're wasting your energy and you're investing into just negatively oriented shit. So now that we've talked about what ill will is and the characteristics of what ill will is, of how you would define ill will, of what it looks like, now I'm going to be talking about identifying ill will. And this is about identifying ill will in yourself, you know? It's not about going around and saying, he has ill will, he has ill will. What I'm talking about is identifying ill will in yourself. But there's something important in this that I want to add. And what this is what I'm about to tell you is what hinders the identifying of ill will within yourself. There's two things that hinder the identifying of ill will within yourself. The first, and these are Sanskrit terms, is Adrishta. Adrishta means not knowing, or unseen, or unaware of, or lack of awareness. And what this means is the being doesn't know they have ill will. And this being could be you, it could be me, it could be others. I'm talking about the process of identifying and recognizing ill will. In a being who has this Adrishta, they don't know they have ill will. They literally are unaware that they have malintent and ill will, and therefore cannot identify it as being there in the first place. If they don't know they have ill will, they don't know that it's there. They don't even know it's a thing, you know what I mean? And also, they may see it in another being, but not dive too deep on a philosophical level of, oh, that's ill will. That person has ill will. That being who has Adrishta and doesn't know how to recognize their own ill will may just think someone else who has ill will is an asshole or just stupid. They're not going to dive deeply into the reflection of why that being is being that way because of this Adrishta that they have. Because they don't know that level of psychology. They don't know that level of awareness and ego that, oh, that's ill will. You know what I mean? They literally don't know. That's what Adrishta is you're not aware of it. So if you're a being who has Adrishta, you can't identify ill will, at least yet, because you don't know it's there. Sometimes, I have listed here that this is important, and it is. Sometimes, especially if one has Adrishta of ill will, not unknowing of their own ill will, they may not see it at all in anybody, themselves or others. And sometimes it is hard to see ill will directly in others, for it is usually disguised in a good way. Not in a good way, it's not disguised in I guess you could say that. It's hard to see ill will directly within someone else because it's disguised within that being. It's within them. They think it's in that area where you can't touch and you can't see how I really feel. And hi, I love you, but deep down in my head I want something bad to happen to you. That's the disguise, is that they're not going to express it. So even if you're aware of ill will in yourself, you may have a hard time knowing if someone else is acting in an ill will kind of way. You can really only know, at least where we're at right now, if you have ill will in you. And maybe as you begin to become familiar with what ill will is, you will begin to be able to identify it in other people. But that's a whole nother story. That's when you're aware that you have ill will and you are working on it yourself and can begin to see the traits and patterns of what ill will looks like in others. And sometimes I guess I can say it's pretty fucking obvious. It's pretty obvious when somebody wants something bad to happen, because maybe they literally tell you. They trust you on a level where they tell you that ill will they have towards that person. Or, on that level it's completely obvious. You see someone and someone they love gets murdered, and they talk about wanting that person to have their fucking throat slit, or hung, or shot, or killed with a poison in jail. They tell you the ill will that they have. So sometimes it's completely crystal clear obvious that someone has ill will. But I also wanted to say, because I do think that's important, sometimes it's hard to see ill will because it's disguised in such a good way. The person's really putting on a good act of keeping their malintent hidden, which isn't good. So yes, identifying ill will. If there's Adrishta in the being, whether it's you or others, they don't know they have ill will. So therefore they can't even identify and work on that ill will. The next thing is, and these are, I guess in a way, two types of people. There's Adrishta, they don't know they have ill will, and then there is Avidya, where, and this is another Sanskrit term, which means ignorance. And I like to use the word ignorance. I pronounce it more ignorance. Ignorance means you're ignoring things. You're ignoring things. And the reason I put this in with identifying ill will is because if you have avidya towards your ill will, you're going to justify and rearrange your ill will to seem like it is out of love or wisdom or clear observation. You know kind of deep down on an intuitive level that that's ill will that you have, but because of the avidya, because of your ignorance of ignoring what you know ill will is, you put a spin on it and you justify it and you say, well, it's out of love. It's out of wanting the spiritual awakening of that being, or you know what I mean? You put a little spin on it and you justify it and you make it make sense. You make it seem like it's good and it's out of good and compassion and love, but it's not. And what's going on is you have ill will, and because you're slightly inclined to recognition of your own mind, and because of being slightly inclined, you still have plenty of avidya. You still have plenty of ignorance towards the whole thing going on. So you put this little egoic spin on it to make it seem like you're not as bad as you intuitively know you are. And that is in knowing you have ill will, which is Vidya. And you don't just go from Adrishta, not knowing about any of the ill will, to Vidya, of knowing clearly and precisely that you have ill will and they have ill will, and knowing how to transform it and what to do with it. If you do, congratulations. You just went from not knowing at all that you have ill will to seeing crystal clear as day with Vidya, with knowing and seeing that you have ill will within you. Usually it will go in a cycle of Adrishta, not knowing, to Avidya, ignorance and distortion, kind of knowing, to Vidya, clearly seeing, clear as day, the knowing of the ill will that's within you. So it kind of goes in that cycle of you don't know, and then you kind of know, but you're putting a spin on it to make yourself consciously feel a little bit better about it, and ignoring what you know ill will to be, and how you know deep down that that's not right, but maybe if I think about it like this, it's all good. You know what I mean? I keep checking just to make sure it's still going. I have PTSD from my videos shutting off, and I keep talking for hours on end. So yes, through working on yourself and identifying ill will, you will move from not knowing you have ill will to realizing that there are traits of ill will within you, but kind of justifying it, to slowly beginning to see very clearly when ill will arises within you. That's generally the pattern of recognizing ill will. And I'm talking about all this shit, but I'm still very much so full of avidya. I'm still very much so full of ignorance and distortion of these great, beautiful things that I'm talking about and have learned about. I don't have crystal clear vidya of these things, just to let you know. I'm just talking about how it feels in essence to me. So now that we've talked about identifying ill will, and once again, this is in yourself. Don't worry about others. It's going to be a long and arduous road if you're worrying about everybody else and not worried about yourself. Focus on yourself. Look at identifying ill will in yourself. Now that we've talked about... Ooh, is my nose bleeding? Oh, dang it. Now that we've talked about identifying ill will within yourself, I'm going to talk a little bit about transforming ill will, because as I've been saying all throughout this video, it's not really a good trait to have. It's not cool to have ill will towards fellow souls, you know? So it's kind of a good idea to work on transforming ill will. So the first step in transforming ill will is knowing and identifying that you have ill will. Move from Adrishta to Avidya to Vidya. That's how I have it listed here. If you want to transform ill will, you have to know that you have ill will. You know, that's kind of self-explanatory. So if you want to transform it, you got to know that you're filled to the brim with that. You know. Direct and proper knowing of one's ill will is the first step to transforming this ill will, is knowing that you have it. You know what I mean? Admitting to yourself that you have it. Which might not be easy, but it is a beautiful step in, I guess, what I would call the right direction, or a better direction of recognizing, oh my God, like, I have lots of ill will. I have lots of negatively based thoughts towards all these other beings, you know? And you may have the feeling of wanting to transform this. And the very, very first step in doing that is knowing and admitting that you have ill will. And I do want to mention real quick why ill will is never a good thing. I've kind of been touching on it throughout the video, but it's never good. It's called ill will for a reason. It's negatively oriented doing. It's negatively oriented choosing. You know what I mean? It separates and binds and severs and distorts spiritual awareness even further. Having ill will, it just makes things worse. It makes things harder for you and the person to whom you have ill will. It distorts spiritual awareness even further of the one who has ill will and the one to which the ill will is directed. It's not good for either parties. It's not good for you to be having ill will, and it's not good for the person that your ill will is directed to. Not good for either of you guys. Everything is energy. Everything is energy. Ill will hurts and separates the one who has it, perpetuating the causes of ill will even further. If you have ill will and you're acting on it, it's going to make you suffer even more, and that suffering is part of the cause of why you had ill will in the first place. So you get in a cycle of just wanting bad shit to happen to people because you don't feel good inside. It's not good energy. Ill will is not good energy in any way. It causes and perpetuates suffering in you, and it does the very same thing to the person that your ill will is directed to. It makes it harder for them. It arouses ill will within them. They act on it because they hurt, and ill will is done, and it's a cycle. It bounces in between each other and ripples out. It's a rippling effect. It's a domino effect. Acting on ill will, no, I'll say not acting on ill will is a beautiful step, a beautiful good step, you know, a beautiful first decision of making right decisions, better decisions, positive, more mindful decisions, of stopping the cycle of ill will and acting on ill will, because that's like the most intense form of ill will, is acting on it. Not just having it, but acting on it. Ill will is based in the small, separate self and causes more obstacles than if it were not to be there. It's that simple. It's that simple. If there's no really good reason to have ill will or to act on ill will. It doesn't help you, it doesn't help anybody else. And where this ill will is being born out of is out of the limited, inadequate, separate self that desires and suffers and wants all this stuff that it can't seem to get. That's where ill will is born. So if you're aware of ill will but also have avidya and you're thinking that your ill will is in good intent and out of good things, and it's just remind yourself that this ill will is being born out of the ego that is what causes all this negative shit. If you're having ill will, it's not born out of the greater spirit. Unless you want to talk about the web of how this moment itself is free of self and just is the unfoldings of karma, which we'll get into, but remind yourself that if you're having ill will, it's probably not from your higher self. It's probably not from the deeper essence of what we are. It's probably being born out of the little self that we all feel ourselves to be, the ego. So now that I've talked about what hinders us from being able to recognize and transform ill will, I want to talk a little bit about how to actually transform it, which I must remind you is something that I'm actively doing, trying to work on in myself. So what I'm saying here, it's not like I've mastered it and I don't have ill will. I'm literally talking about this shit because I don't like how I have ill will, and I don't want to have those qualities within myself. And it's not like I'm pushing them away. I'm more so just suddenly bringing them to the light. Because at work today, I was like, wow, it's not good to fucking think in these kinds of patterns that I have, And it made me think of ill will. And I'm going to be sharing with you what I have mustered in how to transform ill will. The sort of things that can be done to allow us to move beyond our ill will. So these are just some things that you can use as direct upayas or methods to getting out of your ill will states, to getting out of the thoughts and fantasies and actions of ill will. And the first I have here is put into perspective how unloving you're being. Do you really think it's wise and compassionate and loving to have ill will towards someone? Do you really think it's out of love for wanting something bad to happen to someone? It's not. Realize how unloving that is to have ill will. That might help you transform it a little bit. That might help you come to the awareness of what it means to have ill will. Think about the innocence of the spirit of the one to whom you're directing your ill will. Think about how you're making them feel. That's a soul. That's a being. It's like a baby. It's a being. And you want something bad to happen to them. Think about that. To fulfill your desires. It's not cool. It's not cool at all. And using these things I've listed here are methods of how to motivate you to transform ill will and to not just not give a shit that you have ill will, but things that kind of put into perspective of how it's not really cool to be thinking like that, and just realizing how unloving it is to have ill will, and realizing the innocence and the tenderness of the being that you're hoping bad shit happens to. It's not cool. And when you have that compassionate, deep perspective of it, you realize how fucked up it is. You realize how not cool it is that your ignorant, deluded self, ego, is wishing bad for that being that has their struggles and has their karmas and has their problems and their ignorance They're just their own being, and you're over here trying to fulfill your desires of wanting some bad shit to happen to them so that X, Y, and Z can happen. You know what I mean? And how to transform ill will? Be loving instead. Kind of like I'm pointing towards here. Be loving instead. Cultivate different qualities of love and unity and presence and patience and compassion and empathy and understanding, you know? And I have in quotes there, being reasonable. And you want some bad shit to happen to them, developing these qualities of compassion and patience and trying to understand how they feel. You know? These are things that might allow us to transform our ill will and completely diffuse that ill will in the moment when we look at it from these deeper perspectives. Presence and unity, seeing the connection between you and that being or that group of people or whoever it is that your ill will is pointed towards. And developing qualities of love is a big deal because developing qualities of love, you can't have ill will when you're in love. Ill will comes out of the little separate self that is a hungry ghost that's longing for something that it can't get. And that's not in love. That being isn't in love. The spirit is in love. And when you're in love, when you're with the spirit, you don't have ill will. And that's just a sign of where ill will is coming from. It's not coming out of the goodness of love and unity and understanding and caring. It's coming out of a manipulative, control freak ego. Developing the qualities of trust and openness and humor and lightheartedness and tenderness and care and concern, brother and sisterhood. These are things that allow you to get a step up from the ill will that you're thinking or fantasizing about or thinking about acting on, you know? Developing these qualities of openness and joyousness and humor and the lightheartedness allows you to see why that's not really cool at all, you know? Seeing in a different way. Oh, I'm sorry, I blew that right at the camera. Wow. That's the next thing I have listed here of how to transform ill will is just reflection and seeing in a different way. Forgiving and not holding grudges and being honest. These are all things that help us to transform ill will, which is energy, negative energy, into positive energy. And that's really what a yogi is someone who can move energies, someone who knows how to work with the energies of their being, and not only knows how to move energies, but knows how to discern what energies are negative and what energies are positive, you know? And doing these things that I've listed here are a good way to work on, to at least begin working on transforming ill will into light, you know? Not holding grudges. That's not a good way to transform ill will, by holding grudges. Holding someone's past against them, where they come to you in light, in love, in humor, and because they did you wrong 2 years ago or whatever it was, you have ill will towards them and give them a cold shoulder and don't show them love because you feel like they deserve this or that. Ill will. That's what we've been talking about. So not holding grudges. Don't, let go of your grudges. It's fine. Don't. They're not gonna be that person that you despise, which is why you hold a grudge. They're not gonna be that person quicker if you let go of holding that up against them every time they talk to you and see you. It's that simple. Another way of transforming ill will is recognizing that we're not perfect. We're not perfect enlightened beings. And then I have written here, yet. We're working on ourselves. That's what this is all about. That's what this whole video is about, is talking about how we have ill will and we have negative ass tendencies and we are fucked up in some ways and think in some really messed up ways, and we're not perfect. The person next door and your siblings and your family and your friends, we're not perfect. And that's what working on ourselves is all about, is realizing, oh shit, like I'm not operating on as good a level as I could be right now. You know what I mean? There is so much potential of what I could be, and I'm over here wanting bad shit to happen to people and all this other stuff, and I'm sad and I'm angry and I'm judgmental and unhappy and mean and arrogant. Like, wow, like that's our imperfections on the scale of the ego that works on itself to become spiritual, And there's so many levels to this stuff, guys. It's fractal. It's a fractalizing thing of there's the microcosm and the macrocosm of it is perfect. We are all perfect. We are all working on ourselves, It reminds me of the Buddhist master who said, we're all perfect and there's room for improvement. That's really the vibe. It's paradoxical. It's all right on how it should be, but we can work on ourselves, and it's a good idea to work on ourselves, We all have work to do. We are all right where we're at in our spiritual development. It's kind of what I've been talking about. If you have ill will, give yourself a little bit of space, You're not perfect. You're a conditioned ego that's been through all this shit. Give yourself some space. No wonder you have ill will. Look at the culture you've lived in. Look at the things you've gone through. Look at the media and all the stuff you've indulged in and all the times you've been let down. No wonder you have ill will, Give yourself a little bit of slack. It's chill. It's fine. It's just a matter of recognizing, identifying ill will in yourself and learning how to transform that ill will and then implementing those things you've learned how to do of how to transform the ill will. It basically just says here, develop understanding, allow yourself, allow yourself to be where you're at. You have ill will. Oh no, are you gonna develop and cultivate more ill will because you know you have ill will, or are you gonna cool it a little bit and start to pay attention to when this ill will arises, rather than just trying to immediately transform it? Maybe just start by noticing when ill will arises in you, and then just let your mind continue to do its thing and be its arrogant, ill will, negative, fulfilled self, and just begin to recognize it. Just start by recognizing the ill will. You don't have to go and fucking hike a spiritual mountain and overcome your ill will and become enlightened, It doesn't have to be a head trip. Just slowly recognize that we kind of act like pieces of shit, You don't have to shock yourself into that's kind of what Satori is sudden awakening of, oh my god, you know what I mean? But you don't have to do it that way. You can start just by realizing and saying, okay, wow, that's ill will. I'm kind of being arrogant and ignorant, and this is what I'm imagining, and this is why it's not so good. Just kind of taking it easy. And the next thing I have here of how to transform ill will is to continue your sadhana, which is spiritual practice. Sadhana means spiritual practice. Whatever that may be. That's a point I have made here too. Whether you are a Buddhist and you go and you sit in meditation for an hour every day, or you visit retreats every month or whatever, or if you're a Hindu and you sing bhakti devotional music to a deity, or if you take entheogenic medicines down in South America with shamans, or if you sit in your friend's basement and take acid and smoke DMT, whatever your method may be, whatever your sadhana is, if you're going into it with the intention of bettering yourself, and you notice that doing these things is bettering yourself, I would consider that your sadhana. I would consider that your spiritual practice, where it's something you're doing to with the intention of awakening and becoming a better person, and you're seeing results coming out of doing it, that's your sadhana. And that's how to transform ill will, is to continue your spiritual practice. Don't lose your faith, Continue to work on yourself. Study the script, and this applies to whatever your sadhana may be, but I have listed here: study the scriptures, history, and teachings of the spiritual practices and religions that you ascribe to. And I put religions in quotes because, as we all know, a lot of these spiritual practices don't really feel like religions when we're in it and doing it, Maybe, at least I do kind of think of religion as just kind of like a fanatic, like blind faith type thing, and what I would consider my spiritual practice is a way more intimate and realistic approach to, holy shit, I exist, and this is the traits of how I am, and this is life, and I want to work on myself, you know what I mean? It's just got a kind of little different spin on it. But yeah, study the scriptures and the history and the teachings of the spiritual practice that you feel pulled to. Study it and learn the ways of the masters and the teachers of those spiritual practices, and read the books, read the Tao Te Ching, read the Bhagavad Gita, read fucking Who Am I by Ramana Maharshi, read Be Here Now, read the stuff and consume the knowledge of these high beings who made these teachings. These are all things that will help you in continuing to not only develop spiritually, but in particular this thing I'm talking about, transform your ill will into something better. I'm just gonna check that. Honestly, if you would be so kind, I'm gonna go pee real quick. I'll be right back. Oh, thank you all so much for waiting. Just making sure it's still going, yeah. So yeah, how to transform ill will. Continue your spiritual practice, Keep doing what you're doing. If you're watching this video, I'm assuming you're at least kind of inclined into some sort of spiritual practice. So just keep doing that. Keep doing what you're doing, Have a good diet, Oh, the first thing, I can just tell you that real quick. Eat good. And not just physically, the food you're eating, but the media you're consuming, the TV you're watching, and the activities you indulge in, and the people you listen to, and take a look at what you're consuming, If you're eating, heavily processed foods or animal products that were produced by corporations that are treating these animals horribly and hate their jobs, and you're consuming food that was made with lack of awareness and lack of care and anger and boredom and sadness and all these things of these people that run these animal murdering corporations and industries, it's probably affecting you in some way. Where, just for example, there's certain I've heard stories of, yogis in India who They eat something that was made by someone angrily, or that it wasn't blessed as it was cooked. And that the sadhu didn't know that, and then the sadhu ate it and then got violently sick because of the reaction to the karmas, the energies that he had just ingested. And I think this is the case with us too, If you're eating really unhealthy, heavily processed stuff, or like I was saying, stuff that's not made with love, it's probably affecting you. It's probably affecting you a little bit. And rather than eating that kind of stuff, and I'm not telling you to go straight up vegan, vegetarian, right off the bat, like go to a completely pure and sattvic diet, Just maybe start growing your own vegetables and your own fruits, maybe, or eating fruits and vegetables and lighter diets, and cooking meals that are closer to home, are closer to earth, to Gaia, and not as much so snacking, and just having a better diet will help us transform those negative qualities that I've been talking about. And yeah, like I said, diet doesn't just go for the food you're eating, it goes for the videos you watch and all the TikToks you're scrolling through, and the miles you scrolled with your fucking thumb, dude. That kind of stuff, those little blips of dopamine hits, as they're called, that are all that shit. And the media you're watching, the news and the propaganda and the people you look up to, the celebrities and role models, all that stuff is your diet. That's what you're consuming. That's what you're indulging in. And a lot of that plays, I think, way more of a role on the way we function in the state we're in than we know of or would like to admit, I feel. So yeah, pay attention to what you're eating and what you're consuming as far as media and technology and that kind of stuff goes, especially in this time that we live in with the amount of just shit you can watch. Give a little bit of concern into the stuff you're consuming, and you'll be grateful you did. This is very important, but simply developing a meditative practice, developing a moment of moving into awareness, of where you're pulling back, you're letting go of trying to get spiritual and trying to transform your ill will and trying to do anything, frankly. You're moving into a space of just being. Really allowing yourself and forgetting the self that's allowing the self, just moving into this moment where there's nothing to do, there's nowhere to go, there's no self that does and goes. This moment just is. And developing a relationship, an intimate tie with just being, which is what I would consider meditation. It's so very important in this spiritual work we're doing. Because the ego is the one the spiritual work's all happening to, and oh my god, I need to work on myself. I'm so negatively oriented. I have so much ill will. I have such a bad diet. I'm so sad. I don't know the way out. That's the one all that shit's happening to. And meditation is just right behind that. Just here. And it's done. On that level, it's done. The spiritual path is done. That is enlightenment. It is this moment. There is nothing, no time, no space, just present, just beingness. That is pure, and no ill will, and no bullshit. It's just right here. And learning how to at least touch that place occasionally. Whether it's sitting down and meditating once a week or 10 minutes every day, whenever it is, finding a moment to at least try to be with presence, to try to be with the spirit and the creator, Very important. This is a very important one as well, and this is all tying into methods and upayas of how to transform all this ill will and this negative bullshit. Vichara-Atma, which is what Ramana Maharshi talks about, which is self-inquiry, looking into the self and reflecting and philosophizing on the you that you think you are, the ego that thinks it's this self, you know? Who am I? What is death? What does it mean to die? What does it mean to be alive? What is consciousness? What is awareness? What is existence? What is pain? Why do I hurt? What is this pain that I feel? What is this love? What is this feeling of love? What happens when I die? What does it mean to be here? Who am I? What is this? Vichara-Atma. Philosophizing. Looking into existence. Doing this in a faithful and sincere way. I was going to say serious, but not serious, but sincere. Doing this in a sincere way will very much so help you. Who is it that has all these negative malintents towards people? Why is he so uptight? Why does he give such a fuck? Who am I? What is this? That stuff greatly helps. It can be scary and frightening. Frankly, this spiritual path is kind of all of the feelings. It's ecstatic, it's impossible, it's possible, it's scary, it's frightening, it's amazing, it's bliss, it's hell, it's pain, it's everything. But indulging and utilizing these upayas, these methods, will work wonders in your life. And make this life beautiful. Make this life worth living, if I should put it like that. Look into the self, Vichara-Atma. I think you'll be surprised at what you feel and what seems to come about when you look into the self. And, you know, when the self looks into the self, you know, it's very interesting and fascinating stuff. Here we are, right here. Yeah, and I have in parentheses here, reflect on life, humanity, animals, space, time, death, love, humor, everything. Reflect on it all. Look at it. Investigate. What is all this shit? What is this moment? I'm literally sitting here with this little robot telling you about what it's like to be in this moment and how I feel about ill will, you know? And now I'm checking to see if this little robot is still recording. It's so wondrous. When I don't know what it is. I don't know what it is about becoming fascinated with reality and self and the spiritual path, but there's something. It's an infinite reservoir of wonder and work that there is to be done, at least in this lifetime, and what this moment is and feels to be. How to transform ill will. Take the time, effort, and initiative to work on and better yourself for the greater good and awakening of all beings. And I have in parentheses there, yourself included. Because it's not just like you're doing all this work on yourself so that everybody else can experience the greater goods of things and you are spiritual so you don't need things to be greater good. No, it's for you too. It's for all beings. Working on yourself and having sadhana and recognizing this existence, you know, it's for you too. It's for you to live a good life and to live a harmonious and fulfilling life. And not only for you, but for all beings. For all beings. And I wanted to make that a point that, yes, you're included in that. It's not like you have to be some sort of head trippy bodhisattva that is beyond it all and is here to bless everybody. And if you're that, thank you so much for being here. Namaste. But yeah, it's you too. It's for you too. Spiritual working on yourself and the spiritual practice and the spiritual path is for you too. And everybody else. You know. You'll be very glad you took the time and the effort in working on yourself. It shows what you reap you sow, and wait, is that how it said? You reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. What you sow, when you sow positive and mindful intentions, good shit happens. Good shit happens. You wake up. You get over stuff. You know? You meet amazing people. You learn amazing things. You see amazing places. You touch deeper and deeper levels of yourself and become more intimately one with this experience, which is just pulsating with love and wonder and beauty, and it's unimaginable, you know? And when you take the time to invest in working on yourself, the things that you will reap, you will see why it was worth it. I guess is a good way to put it. Trust the process. Trust the process. Allow nature to take her course. This and I have listed here, this comes through faith and devotion. To be able to trust the process and allow nature to just do what it's doing, you know? It takes a lot of faith and devotion and trust in the spiritual path. And what's funny is that comes through your sadhana. And through working arduously in your spiritual practice, your sadhana, you develop faith and devotion and trust in allowing things to just be how they are, which in turn brings you deeper and deeper into your sadhana. It's tied right in, you know, and it's so beautiful when you begin to see how these things are literally transforming your life. And like we're talking about here, transforming ill will right before your eyes, you know? So yeah, trust the process. It's all good. We're right where we're at. We're gonna do what we're gonna do. Nature is gonna do what she does. Allow it to happen. Allow it to happen. Allow, you know, see her as divine. And let her do what she's doing through you. Let nature, let God, let the Spirit do what it's doing through you. And that takes faith. That takes devotion, because you say, oh God, how do I know God's real? How do I know God's going to do the right thing through me? You begin to have faith in the Spirit through your sadhana. And when you have faith in the Spirit, you do more sadhana. You do more spiritual practice. Because you develop faith in it, you know it fucking is right on and brings you into this moment and makes things make sense in a weird, nonsensical way. And then you do more, and you do more, and you indulge more, and you just awaken. That's what awakening is. It's the everly inclining curve of awakening to this moment. And personally, I feel that's kind of what humanity as a whole, what existence as a whole is doing, is waking up. Waking up. So you're not as much in the reins, in the controls, you know? It's nature doing what she does. Trust that process. Recognize that process. Act like you have a choice. And by acting like you have a choice, choose to do the good shit. Choose to do the mindful shit. But know that it's all carrying out just as it should. So you don't give yourself such a hard time, you know. I remember there's a beautiful quote said to Krishnadas. Krishnadas asked Siddhima, do we make choices, or is it all His grace? And by His grace, he meant God, really. And Siddhi Ma said, it's all His grace, but act like you make choices. Act as though you make choices. Because doesn't it kind of seem like you make choices? You know? A lot of people think it's, free will and you can do what you want. If you can do what you want, don't go around wishing bad for all these fucking people. Work on yourself. Come into the spirit. Come into this moment. Come into love. Come into bliss. Come into, maybe not even so far out as that. Maybe just come into presence. Come into awareness and relaxation. And just resting in this moment. Yeah, I have listed here kind of what I was just saying. Karma is unfolding. It's all determined and destined. But act as though it's up to you and do the right thing. It's all going to happen as it does, but since we feel like we make choices, let's choose to do the right thing. It's all going to happen, but choose to do the right thing. It's fun. This spiritual shit is fun. It's also hard as fuck. It's also sad and trippy and far out and mind-bending and maddening. It's everything. But just see that karma is happening. It's all happening as it should, and you're going to awaken as you do, and you're going to have the seeds of ill will be germinated and born and sprouted as they will, and you're going to see how it affects people, and you're going to see how people treat you because of ill will and your ignorance and ego and all that stuff, and you're going to just start to begin to see how it's all fucking playing out, and you're going to see, oh, I'm starting to see what that teaching is saying now. Oh, I see, when I'm an asshole, people are assholes to me. Okay, I don't really want people to be assholes to me. Maybe I should be better. Maybe I should work on myself. Or, oh my God, I wish people would just be, like, awakened and in love. And rather than thinking like that, starting to realize, you know what, maybe I should be the one that's awakened and in love. Maybe I should be the one that is the example of what I want to see in the world, Yeah, and I've listed here, you will get better when you faithfully and arduously work on getting better. That's how it works. When you work on yourself with faith and devotion and effort, right effort, deep sincerity, things will change for the better. Things will change for the better if you're doing it from a place of wisdom, And I have faith, I have faith in, like, what I'm doing and what you guys are doing and what humanity is doing as a whole. We know what we're doing deep down, We know what's going on a really deep level. Yeah, don't give up. Don't harden off your heart and become bitter. If someone hurts you, don't hurt them back. Be the example that you'd like to see. Be the light. Be the love. These are all very big, wishy-washy, great things that I'm saying, But they're reminders. They're reminders for not only you as I say it, but me as well. Me as well. To be the light, to be the love, to be the wisdom, to be the one that works on myself, and develop, be the strength, be the example of strength and purity that you wish to see in others, rather than waiting for someone that's going to come and show you how to do it. Do it, very much so. I must say, very much so. Easier said than done. But these are all just reminders. These are all just things that may begin to kind of sort of allow us to tweak how we're being a little bit and step into a space of presence and love and reflection, clear seeing, darshan of the spirit. Not only the spirit, but the ego that's making all this shit so troubled and weird, So that's it, guys. That's my PowerPoint on ill will, what ill will is, the characteristics and the sort of causes of ill will, how to identify ill will in ourselves, mainly ourselves, and how to transform ill will. Basically, just continue working on yourself. And you'll see all this shit too. You'll see it all. So thank you for watching. Namaste, blessings, and have a wonderful journey of awakening. Thank you guys.